Okay guys, welcome back for part 2, and today we're going to put everything together and get it down the motor. So without further ado, while doing this, you can hit the like and subscribe button. Just go ahead, I'll give you a second to do that now. There we go. Okay, so we got our chrome oil ring. We're going to drop that on there. We want to make sure the two ends are butted up against one another. And then on the small little pieces that go along with that, one goes above and one goes below. Get them separated here. Get a little bit of oil on them, they get sticking together. Now we want to stagger the gaps. We want to stagger that, so, in relation to the where the two ends butt together. Stagger that just a little bit. And on the oil ring, I've never seen any negative effects of not staggering them enough, or maybe too much or whatever. As long as they're staggered and they're not going to stack up, it's fine. Now on the scraper ring, which is the second ring, and the top ring, the compression ring, it does make a difference. So we're going to make sure that we do that correctly, and I'll show you how to do that. So we're going to find our dot. There's our dot, and if you don't have a dot, you're going to have the bevel. The bevel is going to be facing down, and our dot is up, so we're good to go. Now they make a special tool that you can buy where you could put this in the tool, open it up and spread it and put it down over. I don't like to use that tool because it can really expand the rings quite a bit, and you get a lot of pressure in the cylinder from the ring and a lot of drag. Now for disassembling a motor, they work really good. But I actually broke a ring one time assembling it because I had to spread it out so far, but it's probably my fault, but this method here is a little bit easier, I think. So what we do is we start it, again, making sure our dot is up, which it is. We start it in the groove, and we just kind of work it around, spiral it around the piston down into the groove right there. There we go. So we're good to go. All right, so there's that ring. We're going to take our top ring. Normally the dot would go up. Also, if you don't have a dot, you're going to have the bevel. The bevel would be facing up. This one doesn't have that. Anytime you have a ring where it doesn't have a dot and doesn't have a bevel, it doesn't matter. So we're just going to drop that in, spiral it around. There we go. Now we're good to go. All right, so we're going to lubricate this up a little bit. Take our mystery oil. And I like to spin that around just to spread that around a little bit. Get a little bit more. Get it all down inside there. Why do I use this? I think there's some properties in it that kind of like anywhere properties it has. I just put it in a squirt bottle because it's a little bit easier to use than a big honking bottle. But what do you call it? There's some like anti-scuff additives and things like that. It seems to work good on assembly. The one motor I didn't do that, and I had all kind of issues. So this is kind of my go-to. Now for the compression in the scraper ring, we want the gap to face 90 degrees away from each other. And we don't want it here or here. There's the rod. We don't want to have it here and here. We kind of want to stagger it at 45-degree angles in relationship to the wrist pin. So we're going to spin that one on that side. So the bottom, or the scraper ring is facing that direction, and then we're going to turn the top one over so it's 90 degrees facing away. There we go. Now we're good to go with that. All right, next step is our ring compressor. So leave that up with some it's just 5W30 oil. I've seen people use 30 weight too. A lot of times people they want something a little bit heavier to add a little bit of protection, but I mean, as thin as that stuff is, this will be fine. That little 5W30 does have a top and a bottom. The part where the tool goes in, that's the top, so we can reach and crank it on. And you notice that we got a couple stainless bands on it. That's we're gonna make sure that goes around where the rings are. So I'll put that in there. And crank it up. Again, we're going to be moving the camera You're aim for kind of a bumpy ride. All right, so get this dialed in. You just want a little bit of the skirt showing through on the bottom. I'll try and crank that. And it's not quite even, so we're just going to give a little tap to even it up because it was in there a little bit crooked. I'm trying, and that's it. It won't go any tighter, so that's what we want. Okay. Now from here, I'm get my hands clean. Okay. From here, I'll take a clean towel. I'm using shop towels here, but you can use a terry cloth towel. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to use a little bit of solvent. There you go. I'll clean the surface of the bearing is going to set on the main part of the rod and the cap. Nice and clean. Okay, and I always leave the bearings wrapped up in the plastic. You can see a little bit of oil dripped on there. That's not going to be a problem, but I want them clean as they come out of the package. I don't want any oil on the back side of the bearing. So here are 2 halves. This looks fine. From here, let's put the tang end in first, which is actually this side. I'm trying to watch what the camera's doing and do this. So we're going to do that side and then just down. It snaps into place. Make sure the 2 ends, they're pretty much flush, which they are. And do exactly the same thing with the cap. Our tang end. Put that in first. I'm just using my thumb to hold that in as I press the other side down. And it bottomed out a nice little click as it drops into place. Okay, some people will scuff these bearings with a Scotch-Brite. I don't like to do that. I like to just put them together the way factory designed them to go. Then we're going to take a little bit of assembly lube, get it on there like so. There we go. Well, that stuff is sticky. All right, now here's where the camera might get a little bit shaky on us, but let's try and get everything situated here so I can get at it pretty easy so it doesn't take me forever on camera. So we're going to move you over here. Oops. Alright, about there. You should be able to see everything from there. Okay? There we go. I think that's pretty good. Alright, so first step is we're going to lubricate the cylinder. Let's get over here. Get some oil on there. And really, you just got to kind of get your hand down in there and just coat the walls, make sure it's all completely covered. Doesn't have to be drenched, but as long as there's a coating on it. Especially since this motor is going to be running here in a few weeks. It's not like it's going to be setting for a long period of time. Alright, so that looks good. I don't see any bare spots where I missed, so I think we're okay. Boy, you get oily here. Yep. All right. Now we got our official mallet, piston assembly. This is the intake side, so I want to make sure the piston is oriented correctly. And we're going to try and do this in one shot. Set it down in there. There we go. And sometimes you do have to crank that down a little bit more. Just going to double check it. Nope, that's as tight as it'll go. I'm bearing down on that pretty hard too. Okay, so I want to make sure it's nice and square in the bore so we don't have any misalignment issues whenever we bring it up to mate it up to the crankshaft journal. I'm going to double check to make sure my crankshaft journal is all the way at the bottom of the motor, the bottom of its stroke. That gives all the room for the piston rod assembly to go down in, and I don't have to worry about nicking the crankshaft. Let's just give it a few love taps here. And that's how that's done. Nice and smooth. Alright, we'll just leave that claps for now. Alright, now we're going to spin the motor over. Notice I just got that down in there just a little bit. So I don't want to take any chances at all on nicking that crankshaft. So flip this over. And this hole is misaligned back here, so you gotta wiggle a little bit. There we go. Okay. Alright. Next we're gonna clean this journal off. Wipe it down. Get the rag underneath there. Try and get the bottom part of the journal. Get that cleaned off. There we go. And it looks like we're good to go. Alright, now it doesn't hurt to do this. Put a little bit of lube on here. Just a little bit. Use your finger, get it around. Put a little bit on your finger, and then get the bottom of the journal. A little bit more. And if this stuff gets places, I can always clean it up. So I'm not really worried about trying to keep this all super neat and clean. We actually have some of the assembly lube that's dripped down to the bottom of the crankshaft. You can just wipe that up. It's fine. It's on the oil pan rail. We can clean that up. I'm not really worried. If it's a little sloppy, that's okay. We can just clean that up. So I want to make sure that that journal is well lubricated whenever the motor starts. Now from here, try and go around this side so I'm not blocking the camera. Get the bike in the way there. Alright, from here, looks like the rod is pretty much in line with the journal. Now if it's not, you can actually use a screwdriver to kind of pull it to one side and kind of hold it from the side and guide it as it comes up. This doesn't have rod bolts. If you have rod bolts, you can put little pieces of hose over top of it and it would help guide it up in. But since these rods, the bolts are go in this way instead of coming up through the rod, they go through the cap. We're not going to be able to do that. Also, if you get the piston in there a little bit twisted, you can just take right on the side of the crank throw and just kind of pry it, and it'll rotate real easy. It's really nothing. It won't hurt anything. All right. So my finger down there trying to guide it up. Some taps here. That's what we want right there. Okay. Next step is lubricate the cap, the bearing rather, and the cap part of the rod. Lubricate that. We have our tang on these particular rods. The little tang and the bearing, those match up, so we put that in that way. There. And we're going to give that just a little tap down into place because these have, I don't think you can see that on camera. No, see, it's already starting to guide itself down on. These have little tiny guides on them to help guide the cap down, center the cap correctly. So just get that going and just give it a little love tap there. Now, when it comes to the bolts, there's a special lube you got to use from ARP. These are ARP bolts. So the lubricant, it's supposed to supply the correct torque reading because the friction and everything, so you don't want to use motor oil on these. So I like to squeeze it out. I like to use one of these little brushes. You can get this from Lowe's, where people use these for flux. So we're going to brush this nice and even. You don't have to glob it on, just so it's even across the threads. It's one of the reasons why I like to use a brush. Start that. It's nice and even. And start that one. Just want to get it started down in the rod. And then we're going to put a little bit under the head of the bolt also, because where the bolt meets the cap, there's a lot of friction there. So we want to reduce that friction so that we get the correct torque reading. All right, so let's get rid of this. That stuff is messy too. Tell you what, it gets everywhere. And then we're just gonna tighten this down. it's a 12-pointed or 12-pointed bolt, so you can't use a 6-pointed socket on it. You gotta use a 12-pointed socket. Just want to snug them up, nothing crazy. Okay, and then we're gonna torque them. Torque these down. They're supposed to be torqued to 43 foot-pounds, so we're gonna do that in 3 steps. Okay, so we're gonna do 15, and then 30, and then 43. We want to sneak up on it for a couple reasons. One, we don't want it to pull down on one side all the way and then pull down on the other side, and then this side here ends up getting loose somehow. So we're going to work our way methodically back and forth. Okay. The other thing is, if I bring this up to, let's say, 40, and then I need to bring this up to 40, and then I only have 3 pounds left. The problem with that is there's what's called a breakaway torque. The breakaway torque on a bolt is always higher than the torque that you're actually putting on the bolt. And the breakaway torque is whenever you overcome the friction of the threads and the seat here, and it actually starts to move. It'll free up. So we don't want to come up too close to 43 first. We want to go to 15, like I said, and then 30. And then it'll be one smooth, gentle arc right to 43. We'll slowly bring it up and stop it right at 43. So first stop is 15, and it's pretty easy to do. Some of these are like torque angle things, and you have to draw lines like we did with the cap bolts here for the crankshaft. But this one here is just a straight torque deal with these particular rods. I'm going to come back, we're going to go up to 30. And I'm going to stick my head in the way probably because I want to be right above that. I don't want to be looking at it at an angle because it'll give me a different reading. I want to be looking directly down on top of the torque wrench right there. Now 43, here we go. Nice and smooth right there. All right, now, besides looking straight down on it, I want to bring it up nice and slow, but not too fast, just nice and slow. Okay, I don't want to jerk it, end up over torquing it, and what happens then is it ends up stretching the bolt and you could have a failure. It's nice and smooth. 42, 43 right there. Okay, that's it. All right, guys, here we go. We're gonna grab hold of our ratchet here. Well, first, I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's flip it over. And that looks pretty good. Next thing we're going to do is put the rear main seal in. There's a housing that goes on with it. And then the rear main seal goes in. Get it in there. So now I'm going to just give it a couple revolutions. There we go. There she is. All working. Okay. Don't have to do too much, just a few times, just to make sure there's nothing binding up or anything like that. That might indicate a bent rod. Even though all this stuff's new, you always want to check it because it's a lot easier to fix it now than after it's in the car, and it's a real headache. So that's how we do this, and of course we did that for all of them. The other 3 before. So try to save a little bit of time, but it does take a little bit less time than what we used in the video. But having to move the camera and explain everything as we went really slows things down a little bit. But you should be able to do all 4 of those once you have everything prepped in maybe an hour, hour and a half. Don't want to get into a hurry with this stuff. Don't want to go crazy. One little thing I wanted to show you is right here. We radius these oil return holes. We did this in another motor, so we're trying to get the oil back to the oil pan as quick as we can. Let me get the camera to focus. Maybe this one. So this is just gun drill down through there. So just radius those holes a little bit. Just as the oil comes down, it'll make its way back to the oil pan a little quicker. So thanks for watching, guys. And next time we're going to put the rear main seal in, and maybe we're waiting on some cams. The cams are on order, so waiting on those. And oh, we have the cylinder head to do too. That's going to be fun. We're going to clean that up real good too. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.